Welcome back to Count Me In, the podcast for management accountants making an impact in the business world. I'm Neha Ratnakar from IMA. Today I'm speaking with Aparna Iyer, the treasurer and head of investor relations at Wipro. Aparna's career got off to quite a promising start when she earned a gold medal for the highest score on the exams by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. She's gone on to hold many roles across the accounting and finance function at Wipro. And along the way, she has constantly pushed herself out of her comfort zone to keep learning new skills and developing her empowering approach to leadership. We cover a lot of ground in this fascinating conversation, from robotic process automation to the benefits of ambition to how we might be working in the metaverse sooner than you think. Let's get started. Welcome to Count Me In. Aparna, it's such a pleasure to finally meet you for this conversation.
Thank you, Neha. It's an absolute pleasure. And I'm looking forward to this conversation, actually.
Awesome. So let's start with an obvious question that's been on my mind ever since I knew about you. You joined Wipro more than 19 years ago, and our generation is infamous for job hopping, right? Tell us more about your long and successful journey in Wipro.
Neha, I'll just tell you briefly about myself. My father worked in a nationalized bank in India, and all the way up to 23 years when I joined Wipro, I've not stayed in a city more than 2 years because we've been always hopping schools, colleges. So for me, also, I'm quite taken by surprise that I actually managed to spend 20 years. In one place, and I think the credit actually needs to go to the organization, because when I joined Wipro, I was very impressionable, raring to go. I think what Wipro really does well is, it paces your career for you, right? I don't spend more than about 3 years in a role, give or take, and every 3 years there is always something that's in the works for, what next, how can things get better, bigger. So in some sense, I've been truly, privileged and lucky that I got an opportunity to work through multiple roles, multiple leaders, and the sector itself has evolved so much through these last 20 years. So much more complexity, so much more M&A. We've had in the last 10 years, we've had so many new leaders join in. So the organization itself keeps changing. There's so much to learn, and this it's such a growing sector that I didn't even realize that I had spent 20 years. The other thing that Wipro does well, and is perhaps one of the bigger reasons for me staying back, is in Wipro Finance. We really build, we hire people from campuses, and then we build careers for them. So all my peers are pretty much tenured in Wipro, and we have like a shared history. So the camaraderie, the collaboration, is just of a very different level, which all of us thoroughly enjoy. So I would say that other than what the organization puts in, it's what my peers put in, both in terms of the kind of benchmark they set, how enriching it is to work with them, how it is to learn from them, and really contribute in the process, right? Like work becomes fun when it's just extended family. So I would say these are two reasons why it just work. And like they say, why fix something that's not broken?
Wow. And that's been quite a journey. Thanks for sharing it with us. And I hope other companies are taking note of these excellent practices.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what has been your biggest challenge in your career so far?
Neha, I think every time you take up a new role, you feel that, oh my God, this is just so much more challenging than, what I've ever done. But, truly, I was most apprehensive about was coming back to work after I had my daughter. And that I think would have been perhaps the most challenging phase of my career, because I was just coming back from a 6 month long break, where I was doing something completely different, right? And somehow when I joined back, and I never thought I would feel like that, I felt very low on confidence. And I wasn't sure whether this is what I wanted to do. Is this the purpose? I felt so overwhelmed, taking care of a young baby and coming back to something very intensive at, in the Wipro finance. It was perhaps one of the phases where I really needed help, right? From all my mentors, from the organization, from my peers, from my reports. And thankfully, that phase, lasted for about 9 months to a year, where, I was just wanted to find my confidence again. And, once that happened, right, and with time, every quarter it kept getting better. All us finance professionals live quarter se quarter tak, like they say, right? So 3 or 4 quarters under the belt, I was feeling a lot more confident again. So that, I think, was one of the most challenging phases, because I needed to find that balance and make sure I was getting it right. So that was one point where I felt I really needed the support of the ecosystem. The other part was when I took on something like treasury and IR, investor relations, the current role that I'm doing. I took this on 3 years back, and I'd not done treasury at all in the first 18 years or first 17 years of my stint here. Knew nothing about markets, hedging, investments, and we all are exposed to it as finance professionals, but I'd not done it with a KRI to exceed a certain benchmark. And
Hmm.
coming in and knowing when you know that you're the person who's perhaps knows the least about that subject in the team, and yet you are the leader, I think it poses very different challenges. So pushing myself out of the comfort zone, being okay with the fact that for another 6 months I'm going to be the person who's going to be least informed in a room, and yet I had to lead it, yet I had to bring my perspective to it, yet I had to understand and learn and work with people. So I think that was also another challenging phase, right? But it's only a matter of time. You just need to apply yourself. So that's the other myth I busted, right? So a lot of them say they don't want to try different things. Because they're just so concerned that how will they add value. What I really understood about adding value is y- your vantage point can be so different, and the value that you bring to the team or you bring to a function can be so different. It need not always come from the tried and tested path. The vantage point that you'll have is very different, and you'll bring very different perspectives, and you can always add value no matter what you do, because everything else is just adjacent. So those are very good learnings for me, and it was challenging, and I was very unsure and anxious many times. But I think you have to give it some time, and you lace it.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your personal story so close to your heart. And also finding your feet after motherhood, but also in new functions, adding value with your diverse perspective. Let's take a minute to talk about growing. We talk a lot about future proofing our careers. What do you think are the competencies of future for the people in both leadership positions and also for our listeners from accounting and finance profession?
It isn't easy to future proof your career, right? I think it is, and it is getting increasingly difficult. At least the first 10 years of my career, the world around me was not changing at the pace at which it is right now. I think there is just so much more information. There's so much more that a professional can do today. There are different ways of learning. But I think to each their own. But if I had a method to this whole madness, it would be to just say that you must allocate a dedicated time every week where you are reading. And it could be a finance journal, it could be something that you've signed up as a course for, or it could be just reading it could be a newspaper that you subscribe to, which you must absolutely absorb newer things, newer perspectives, newer point of view. You must understand what's happening in the world around you, in the world of finance. you can pick up a topic like mergers and acquisitions. You could look at corporate actions. You could look at macroeconomics. You can, taxation. Take a subject that's close to your heart and make sure you read everything about it, right? Um, Other than that, like I said, so take out dedicated time. It could be, a Saturday morning 10 to 12 or a Sunday morning 10 to 12 when you really will just read uh, a good quality journal or a good quality magazine. So that's something that's very, very fundamental. And other than that, I think it's, learning has become far more easier than it ever was. So you must get yourself into online courses, right? And for example, my CFO Jatin Dalal, he's constantly studying. Every year he adds a course to his resume. Now that's something that I'm inspired by. I haven't done that, but there's so much you can learn. You can take up a course on cybersecurity. You can learn what's happening in the world of AI, what's happening in the world of blockchain. There's several courses available. So I would say that, just like the way we take care of, ourselves every day by setting aside, time for, walking or gymming or physical, like that, you have to find dedicated time which you will put in honing your professional skills. And nothing substitutes reading. Nothing substitutes, keeping yourself informed of what's happening in the world around you. And I think that's something that's a basic. And apart from that, if you're able to take out time and go ahead and enroll yourselves in courses where you can keep yourself abreast of all the changes in technology, nothing like that, because everything today comes with the package, in a package with technology.
Right. And although you called it basic, but it's such a powerful insight that you just shared. I love it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. It's basic, but getting basics right is often the most difficult thing to do.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Getting it right and making it a habit. That's what eventually adds up.
yeah.
Awesome. You used a few words like the technology related words, something that your company is great at. Wipro works in the field of cloud computing, cybersecurity, AI, all these hot topics, these buzzwords that we keep hearing about. How can accounting finance people make sense of these new technologies coming up every day so they can just let go of the noise and focus on what's important and how can they best use it in their functions?
Um, all of them pretty much start like buzzwords. And it's very, when you look at it, it sounds vague at first, and you're really wondering how can this ever, substitute what you're doing today in your Excel sheets or in your ERP. But as finance professionals over the last 10 years, we've witnessed certain technology trends that have proved us wrong. Life is no longer about, knowing Excel and ERP. Those are things of the past, right? Today, uh, let me take a simple example like data dissemination, right? Having a single source of truth, making sure the data that you have at the central level becomes accessible to people who need it the most in the business, empowering business leaders rather than having approvals come to you. How do you empower business? By setting aside budgets, right, so that people can decide where they would like to spend, rather than have every approval come to finance. So a lot of there has been a subtle shift in mindset. People expect you not to be the controller, not just to be that person who approves your bills, but they want finance to really move the needle and actually participate wholeheartedly in enablement and empowerment. And for example, how do you like run a company which is 250,000 in size like us? It's almost like running a country. You can't do it using Excel sheets and ERPs. Yeah, you need to democratize data. You need to make sure insights are available for business leaders as and when they need them. How do you really go through that part, and what is the technology cycle? And the only way you can make this happen is through technology. And I think we've all learned it, and everything that we spoke about, whether it's robotic process automation, whether it's AI, you know, all of that has really changed our life today in the way we operate in Wipro Finance. And I'm sure it's true for any organization. Everybody's looking at digitization, right? We've done what started as a pilot. We started using artificial intelligence for forecasting revenues. And when that worked, we grew in confidence, and we then extended it to other areas, right? How do you use data analysis for fraud detection? How do you look at patterns and learn from those patterns and identify payment behaviors, and therefore what could potentially be a credit risk? So these are all things that we've used very effectively. How do you a lot of shared services that we run, whether it's for vendor payments or it's for employee reimbursements, we've extensively used chatbots, right? Simple things, right? How to improve both the efficiency, effectiveness, and the experience at the same time in a large organization like we have to go back to using technologies like this. So what is buzzword today, like maybe metaverse, will, I'm sure 5 years down the line, Neha, when you and I are talking, we will be using metaverse for training. I mean, very clearly, that's one place where we will all learn,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Maybe we all meet in the metaverse, and we have our conferences there. We collaborate there. We've got breakout rooms. I think the technology is there, and I think the proof point of the technology is clear. How do you use it is what I think all of us are grappling with, and a lot of us have made several strides in using blockchain for reporting, in using let's say RPA for ever so many items, including, let's say, reconciliations. Anything that's routine, standard, can be easily automated using RPA. We've all used bots extensively. So yeah, all these things that looked like it was far-fetched are reality now, and we're adopting technology at a pace because we've all seen the benefits it has. So I'm very confident that we will continue to adopt some of these things that are buzzwords today in a big way. Again, 5 years down the line, we will, like I said, we will be talking about technologies like metaverse, digital. How do you work? We are all working in a hybrid world. How do you work half in physical world and how half in the digital world? And I think some of those answers will be provided by some of these technologies.
So true. And I love your take that it's not, let's not get carried away by the buzzwords. And
Right,
thanks for sharing some of the application part of these new technologies and how people can be using them.
right.
All right. So let's pivot from these learning resources to actually learning from you, your leadership experience. Tell us about your experience of building and managing teams over the years. How do you make sure your team is not just performing well, but also feeling well, that they're actively engaged?
Neha, I must confess that it was much easier when we were all only in the physical world. It was much easier to lead a team. It was much easier to know the person because you make an eye contact, you shake hands with someone. I think it makes a big difference. Today, when I pick up the phone and I talk to someone, and when I cannot make that eye contact, when I can't gauge the body language, I think the conversations become very transactional. Very quickly, you move to, how are you? Okay, fine. Now, this is what we need to get done. How do we go about it? As opposed to, let's say, if I had met the person, I would have perhaps realized that the person's looking tired. I may have asked a follow on question. We may have had an opportunity to know something just beyond work, because I always feel that if you really have to be a leader of a team, you need to know your team in and out, right? Inside out. You need to know what's happening with them, around them, and how they're feeling, right? You spoke about how they're feeling. I think that's very, very critical. We're very challenged because now we are all working in a virtual world, um, and therefore I think there are some good habits that all of us can adopt. Maybe in the current times, I make sure I always make I give the person some time to settle down when we're doing a call on Teams or on phone, where you make the person feel comfortable. talk a little bit outside of work, understand what's happening. Are you okay? Is this a good time to talk? Are you fine? And learning to trust, right? Because it becomes very, and it is anxiety even for the manager, because you really don't know whether your team is productive enough. Are things happening at the pace at which it should happen, especially when the outcomes are not coming? These interventions become difficult. So you've got to do these things very sensitively. You should not come across as any time as you're not trusting. So these times it's very difficult, but you've got to check your natural instinct and learn to trust, learn to be more patient, and learn give people more time. Um, but otherwise, managing teams generally, I mean, is all about, for me, setting the agenda, reviewing, and then doing helping them in course correction. See, if outcomes come, then it's your team's credit. But when outcomes don't come, as it's the job of the leader to step in and coach and make those interventions and do that course correction, so that you can reach the goal. I genuinely believe that's how you lead. You set the goals, you review it for how it's happening, you give enough delegation, and when things are not working, that's when you step in and you come in to help. Otherwise, I'm a pretty hands-off leader.
Wow. And while you were answering that question, I was wishing that we were having this interview in person, because you're right. There's so many things that get lost when we can't see the non-verbals, right? And I love your mantra of success: to lead a team, to being hands off and delegating as much as possible, but being there when they need you.
Yeah, yeah. I once heard this, and I don't know if it's a true incident, that, when there was a rocket launch that was happening, and APJ Abdul Kalam, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam was leading that, rocket launch. And apparently Vikram Sarabhai was also there, and they were all very excited, and the press was called, and when it did not go as per schedule, Vikram Sarabhai asked Dr. APJ to just step back and said, okay, now you leave this place, I'll take the press conference, and he took all the flack. And the next time when the launch was absolutely fine, he just let uh, Dr. APJ do all the talking, and he said, now my job is over, I'm flying back. And I think that is an excellent leadership lesson, and that, I think, caught my eye. And I truly believe that when the chips are down, leaders can make a huge difference, because they need to own up and be there and protect. If everything's fine, then leaders can just take a back seat and let the team bask in that glory. So I think that's a very important lesson that I learned.
So true. And when you were telling that story, it brought goosebumps to me. So thanks for sharing that, and thanks for holding that philosophy close to your heart as you lead your
Yeah,
teams in Wipro.
yeah.
All right, you touched upon the hybrid work life and how teams are working in this new environment. How has your life and work changed in this new environment?
It is very, very difficult. Like I said, teams are all over the place, and having them engage, especially young chartered accountants, young young CMA graduates, people who join us. They are the energy, right? They are the backbone of this organization, and it is very tough for us that we don't get to interact with them enough, because they're all in their homes, and very often people are very shy, they don't want to come on videos, we don't want to push them. So I feel that the connect, especially with the young people who are joining, rearing to go, full of energy, who are ready to absorb, right? Like, just like how you say a kid, when they're growing up till the age of 8, they absorb everything that's happening around them, and that perhaps mold how their personalities are going to be when they are late, let's say 20 or 30 years old. Much of that gets formed in the first formative years of first 6 years. Is similarly, when someone's joining you fresh from campus, they are so moldable, right? So when they come in, we'll be very happy to have them in a Wipro campus, mold them in a Wipro way, instill our values, instill our culture, let them know what we stand for. And I think that's what we perhaps miss the most, because we are not able to perhaps put that bond, that umbilical cord of what we stand for, right? And these are the Wipro values. This is how a Wipro leader is, and this is how we do business. It has become much more tougher, but again, going back to technology, thankfully, at least we have, collaborative technologies that we're using in our workplace, where we at least able to do everything virtually. We've all adapted ourselves to having these, chai pe charcha sessions. Everybody gets their own tea, comes together. We have more. So what has happened is, to compensate the the lack of working co-working, we over communicating, right? So everything gets communicated. We have more calls, we make sure people have understood, we make sure people have heard us. There are more emails, there are more calls, there are more webinars, there are more training sessions that people can take up at various times, whenever it's convenient. So yeah, there are more both pluses and minuses, I would say, for me, because I come from a traditional old school way of thinking. I feel the minuses outweigh. I would really like us to at least get to a more effective hybrid model as opposed to 100% remote. But I do understand that there are pluses. There is better productivity. People are staying with their families, so they're far more relaxed. They're less stressed, because they don't have to come here. They're not homesick. They're not running around for to do their chores. They're looked after. I think it's a win-win if you look at it that way. They are able to work with a company like Wipro, and yet be with their families, which are in smaller towns. But I worry that sometimes the exposure that you get when you are in the line of sight, that'll be missed. And I genuinely don't know how leaders, today we have a leadership bench, um, who've all worked in only physical world. Now, if we were to continue like this for another 10 years, how will you produce leaders for tomorrow's Wipro or tomorrow's, large organizations? That I think we have not yet seen. Those proof points haven't been met. I think, yeah, so we'll all evolve, and we'll have to see how the future unfolds. For now, things are good. I think we are okay with a hybrid model. We are asking our employees to come in 3 times a week, when they can, where they can. And I think for now that will do. But as, like I said, time passes, and hopefully we're all, with the pandemic is well behind us. I truly hope people do come back to physical offices, because that's where you really build culture, and you gain exposure, you gain independence, and you truly can innovate, and magic can happen.
Wow. Waiting for that magic and waiting for the world to find that equilibrium where both remote and in office is accepted, and we find that right balance where people are happier but also productive.
Correct.
All right. So I have so much to ask you, but then we don't have enough time. So, time for one final question for the day. If you wanted to leave our global listeners with just one message, one takeaway from our talk today, what would that be?
Mm, have a burning ambition. Never feel shy to raise your hand, and go for it. Chase your dreams, wholeheartedly. I think magic happens when you really put up your hand and say, I want this, and I want this to happen to me. And like they say, the universe conspires. So I think ambition is key, and it's important that you raise your hand and ask for it, and make the most of it.
Wow. I can't think of better parting words than those. Raise your hands. Thank you so much, Aparna. This brings us to the end of our show today. But thank you so much for your wonderful chat and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you, Neha. Wonderful talking to you.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.